Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now I'll be honest with you, I am quite ill, it's late and I'll do my best to get through this video. But please bear with any unpleasant sounds or pauses, I suppose. But we're carrying on with our champion ranking videos, and currently we have made it all the way to the Mystic Top 15 video. Means after this we only have the Cosmic and Mutants to go before we do the overall top champions in the game, and so on and so forth. So, Mystic class. Well, before we get further, second disclaimer. These lists are a mixture of my own personal views plus current game relevance and trends. You know, your lists may be absolutely different, and that is fine. I am not trying to insult your ancestors. The way I see a game, it is generally through a lens of competitive standpoint, as in the champions who perform the best in Alliance War and Battlegrounds do kind of like matter most to me, and I value them more, as I think most players should who are trying to achieve more in the game, because number one, these are the champions that we rely on when losing in the game matters. You see, in Battlegrounds and Alliance War, those are the only two game modes where you do not have any takebacks, you do not have any redos, where winning is not guaranteed. Believe it or not, it might not seem like that immediately, but story content, it's guaranteed that you can clear it eventually. You might not be able to do it now, but you can when you rank up a champion higher, you can when you pick a different champion, you can when you have enough revives, but eventually, if you're gonna keep going, you will be able to clear story content, necropolis, just about any piece of content in the game. Sooner or later, you're going to be able to chip it down. And that also means that the champions you use matter less. You can achieve as much as you want effectively with less than ideal options. You can take a subpar, relatively mid champion, make it harder on yourself potentially, and still get the job done, and, you know, still be happy that you did awesome thing with an Iron Patriot, for instance. And often we see these clips, for instance, like Sabretooth objectively is a trash mutant, and then there's going to be somebody doing crazy things to Sabretooth. Yes, of course you can, but the reason is, why would you? And there are just options most of the time. Anyways, there are exceptions, obviously, when competitive champions are not as well in other areas of the game. Great example here would be somebody like Spiral. Spiral has a lot of value in the game because she kills serpents and she kills dark phoenixes. Obviously, she can do other things, but that's the only reason why she's kind of getting ranked and used in like C5, C4, C3, level of battlegrounds. And objectively, I think, for instance, White Tiger is a better champion. But White Tiger kind of matters less because I think she's better everywhere, but Spiral is the more valued, the more relevant, the more meta impactful champion, even though I think she has worse abilities. So there are rare instances like that when champions kind of do get elevated to these positions they might not necessarily earn. Anyways, enough of all of that. Again, this is the way I see the game, and let's carry on then, shall we? So Mystic class. Now, Mystic class is in a very unique spot right now, to be honest, because I think offensively, they are just about the most capable class. One of the most capable classes. I'd probably say that, yeah, offensively, they're almost the best one. And they're currently just struggling with defenders, because not too long ago, there was a time when Mystic class, had a plethora of defenders, and they were like one of the biggest defensive threats, especially considering things like Mystic Dispersion. They had a wide variety of defenders that, roamed the streets in between Mojo, Mangog, Mordos, Rintras, Sasquatches. There's this whole like big chunky boy club that they had. And now it just doesn't really quite matter as much. And therefore, Mystic class is kind of like left with very offensively leaning and heavy champions, and they're quite weak on defense right now. Additional thing to note is I am not ranking Absman because he isn't really out as a 7-star yet, and it's impossible to measure how good he's going to be. I fully expect him to be in the top 5, top 8 in the Mystic class. We'll see how well he actually makes his appearance as a 7-star in the competitive scene, but he's obviously going to be good. I'm just not ranking him yet because he's not like fully out, available, and used. That said, let's get on with it. Needless to say, there are some champions I really like that I couldn't include in this list, but fine. Put him at 15. I'm going to give it to Longshot. Longshot is, again, he's not as present as he once was, but the thing that does kind of save Longshot is, number one, that in specific circumstances, he becomes one of the fastest nukes in the game. And additionally, at a high sig, he can also be absolutely annoying defender, again, kind of meta merchant mana. A while back, Longshot would have been obviously a lot higher. Mystic class kind of has moved on and is, becoming better. But you can still spot a Longshot struggling around here or there, and especially for people who are not kind of as used to or practiced in fighting him and knowing his matchups, he can throw you on for a loop. Additionally, like Longshot can actually have a relatively decently wide variety of matchups that he can do, especially in the hands of a skilled player. Initially, you wouldn't think that Longshot particularly needs a lot of skill to use well, but I'm sure there are some Longshot videos that you can find on YouTube that will prove you otherwise. And there are things that can be done with Longshot that many people probably don't even really think that they can be done with Longshot. At the same time, he's not, at the peak of his powers. I do think he is over the sunset of his career, so to speak, because he utilizes the Fate Seal and Incinerate to apply it. And unfortunately, Kabam has decided that every other new Cosmic Champion either is going to be Incinerate immune or Fate Seal immune. So that is hurting him a lot. Luckily, obviously, he does have his level 1, which works with bleed damage, but then that still does take away from his effectiveness. Again, I think the one thing that kind of like put me over the edge and made me place him here over somebody like Ebony Maw or White Tiger or a handful of other champions, the fact that he still has some situational meta merchant-esque defensive value, and that can be relevant in other areas of the game. I don't want to spend too much time talking about him. Truth be told, I do think Longshot can be substituted here potentially with Ebony Maw or Diablo or White Tiger or a handful of other options like Mojo, for instance, who I think actually is kind of making a little bit of a comeback now too. Moving next up, Purgatory. And I actually really, really like Purgatory. But here's the deal about Purgatory. Purgatory is an amazing champion to have for like the periphery of the game. Purgatory is one of those champions you want to have access to that you do not need to necessarily fully invest in order to get majority of the benefit. Because she's going to be often very good for, again, she was the best raids champion, right, for like an amazing amount of time, and that gave her quite a bit of exposure. So once a month, we used our Purgatory for raids, 3 to 4 people in the Val group. Then, she's good for like a whole bunch of incursion stuff because she also can ramp up and capture the souls and become like more powerful and more potent over the course of the quest. That gives her extra abilities, extra utility, and those are quite potent, powerful as well. The next thing is, the Alliance War story content. In plenty of places you can find use for Purgatory. When it comes strictly speaking to Battlegrounds, in general, she is nowhere near as present as perhaps she should be, but definitely nowhere near as present as most of the more kind of like relevant Mystic options. And one big part of the reason is because her Neutralize. If her Neutralize like amped up quicker, that's I think all she would need to be more relevant champion, because Purgatory, as Purgatory gains power, the Bloodline Sword seals the soul of opponent's body, including Soul Neutralize, which counts as an indefinite 10% Neutralize passive, max 10. Inflict 1 Soul Neutralize at the start of each fight, and when filling a bar of power. You need to fill 10 bars of power to kind of like get max stack Neutralize, and it's just not fast enough. But other than that, I think they did a cracking job with her rework. I think she's a unique champion. I think it's very good and handy to have Purgatory available to you, because she's, a bit similar to Leader in a sense where every now and then you definitely will want to use Purgatory. Moving on, a champion that unfortunately has kind of fallen off quite a bit. She's still present a bit. It's largely due to her ability to control the ability power rate and completely reverse it and be very efficient with it. But realistically, Chavez went from being like a top 3 Mystic champion for sure, being less and less and less relevant as the game just evolved. That's the reality of it. Initially, we still used her quite a lot because she was one of the more decent, better Serpent counters. Now we have better champions for that, and most of her matchups have kind of been replaced or phased out, and she just isn't as present anymore. Because again, anything that she does, for most part, there are champions that do better and or more. At the same time, she's one of my all-time favorite Mystics. I absolutely loved her for quite a while, since champions actually launched. And for like a year or two after, she was genuinely my most accomplished champion, period. I use her for most of the things in the game, and she just about always delivered. So it kind of pains me a bit to rank her lower. But this is where I feel she kind of belongs right now, because she used to be looked at as somewhat of a defensive threat, but the game has moved away far enough that we do not see that any longer. We do not consider her to be a legitimate defender anymore, and she isn't as potent as many others. And then offensively, either she has her limitations, and she's just not answering the exact problems that Kabam is asking to be answered right now, I'd say. Because of the way she deals damage, for instance, there's like no dots. It's basically like, burst of energy damage and hit damage. And now more and more champions are limiting on that. For instance, the Dark Phoenix, you can't affect Dark Phoenix's power gain, and you can't do that. So Dark Phoenix matchup's not great. Serpent matchup's decently good, but again, there are just kind of like faster options for that work more often. And it's sad, it's annoying. I still hope that she will make somewhat of a comeback, but her value definitely has decreased quite a lot. Still love the champion a lot. Next up, spot number 12, I'm going to give to Rintra, because Rintra is like one of the few Mystic champions that has kind of remained relevant-ish as a defender. Again, in a meta merchant-esque way. Because under the specific conditions, he can become very annoying and potent defender, and that largely comes with the Kabam's love to spam root mechanics and the way Rintra interacts with that. Rintra, similar to Baron Zemo, can get supercharged with some specific nodes, and Kabam just chooses to utilize them quite frequently. And again, additionally, the fact that you will almost always have neutralize on you when fighting Rintra does quite drastically reduce the amount of champions that you can use to counter him. That combined with a bit of a slump of Mystic class, with some of the matchups that he can still do, I think you can put Chao's maybe slightly above him, but right now I would personally kind of like give Rintra slightly more value, because again, there is a bit of the defensive potential that again I don't think is gonna get utilized all the time every time, but does have plenty of instances that make it work, so to speak. It's again one more of those champions that's just kind of aging out. He's like the last one of the big chunky Mystic defenders that's barely hanging in there, but the game is just moving in a bit different direction now, and the massive amount of health pool does not matter as much when you're dealing with so many unavoidable damage champions that have like very limited counters. Next up, I think the top 11 are kind of significantly higher up. I think the next 11 champions have more meaning and more significance in the game by a bit of a margin, and that's going to be Spiral. Now, Spiral... now, just as I said that, I do have to note that Spiral is also a champion that I personally see on the come down, because I think Spiral is a relatively mediocre champion. I always have thought so. I do think that, her damage is almost never the greatest unless opponents have active power gain buffs, which you do not fight a lot of. You genuinely don't. The fact that it works like against Hyperion or something, just like nobody cares. You only care about Serpent. And obviously the fact that she has a lot of dots and can do Dark Phoenix well has helped her a lot too. But I think with the arrival of Nico, with the arrival of new Spidey, for Waiter, her role is reducing, for sure. I do think we see less of her. I think players rely less on her, and I think that's a good thing. Because like when these new transitional things in the game are happening, we are often kind of like forced to make best out of the tools that we have initially, and then eventually we get like better options that deal with these things better. This again kind of reminds me of the Hulk Ragnarok situation, where Hulk Ragnarok is objectively absolutely trash champion, but he had the face me mechanic, which was the just about only thing that dealt well with passive degen nodes. And therefore, for quite a while in the game, even though he was trash champion for just about everything else, we ranked, used, and valued Hulk Ragnarok because there was like no better alternatives. And now those better alternatives are starting to arrive. At the same time, obviously, there are other things that she can do, and there are upsides to her. For instance, her awakened ability at a high SIG, if you're willing to make that investment, can make it quite easy for you to completely become pseudo-immune to shock, incinerate, and poison. That's a fairly solid list of immunities. And on top of that, regioning some block damage, making it chunkier, that is quite good too. Immunity to falter, that is also increasingly more significant ability. So there are things in her kit that have value. And because of that, I do fully expect to see her struggling around for a while still. And then every so often now get pulled out of the, shelf as well. But I do think she is going to be kind of like less. And I think we're going to see her less. I think we're going to use her less. And I don't think we're going to miss her all that much. I apologize to all the spiral fans here. Next up, I'm going to give it to Wolfie. And I think Wolfie's kind of making a bit of a comeback. Because realistically speaking, I love this champion. I think he is amazing. I love the fact that you can alternate the way he plays, how aggressive you can be, how patient you want to be. Truthfully, in generic situations, he is not quite fast enough to compete with the best of the Mystic champions. He's just going to be a bit slower. That said, if you do him additional power gain or there are some outside factors, he absolutely can, and he frequently does compete with the best of them. And he also has a very, very wide variety of matchups that he kind of works. The use of Werewolf, to me, somewhat reminds me how we used Hyperion for many years in the game. As in, like, he's very rarely the best counter for something, but he's quite possibly one of the widest reaching champions in the game. As the fact that, obviously, he can do Serpent quite well. He's not going to be the best or fastest. He can, he can be okay against Dark Phoenix again, because you can slow play it. You don't have to give Dark Phoenix a lot of power. You do have the double hit combo, so when you do get that Incinerate, you can remove majority of duration there. You're going to end up taking some damage, but there's a bit of regen to recover it. And he's okay. He's better than, like, let's say, Kushala for that matchup. And, he's good for Maestro, and then he's going to be good for Yelena. He's actually a very respectable Yelena counter. And then he's reasonably good for Bullseye, for instance, because number one, again, you can do a lot of damage without giving opponent a lot of power. And you do have the double hit medium that can kind of like trigger that evade without getting punished. So you can play around with that. And then, it turns out he's quite good against Photon. Not the fastest, but definitely capable. And so on it goes. Basically, the amount of champions that he can do is very wide. He's not going to reach the station first just about ever, but he can do a lot of matchups. And I have been extremely pleasantly surprised. Since taking him to rank 4, he has been one of my more used champions. Obviously, again, not always, not every meta, but he has definitely earned his catalyst back. I'll put it like that. And yeah. I think he deserves his spot number 10. I don't think he necessarily climbs a lot higher, but I do think people are still kind of underestimating him. There we go. For number 9, I'm going to give it to Hood. And Hood absolutely has made a comeback. He's also like one of the more versatile Mystic champions, I would say. People underestimate how good his ability accuracy reduction is. It's like 60%. It does fail. It's like basically getting double of end rates on the opponent. And you can maintain this up for a high amount of time, and you can fail a ton of abilities. That is huge. And obviously then the whole invisibility thing with your ability to steal opponent's power, that is quite massive. Now, the downside is you do want to have quite big SIG investment. The upside is that, again, he can do a ton of like very weird and wide-reaching matchups. And the reason that kind of reignited his popularity is because he's one of the better counters to Dark Phoenix. It's one of the champions that I struggled to get up until very, very recently. But mine is still unduped. I wish, he was duped and already at higher SIG, so I could invest in him more freely because I do absolutely enjoy this champion. The Battlegrounds, again, was one of the reasons that kind of like breathed a fresh life into Hood, because you did not need to worry about, having enough bullets generally, because that's kind of like a questing limitation. And again, in Alliance War, he does fulfill his role also. And yeah, the key thing is that you have access to staggers quite reliably and quickly, which you eventually kind of like transition into having access to a Fate Seal that also reduces opponent's ability accuracy. You do spam quite a bit of specials with your Power Steel and potentially MD as well. And he definitely takes a bit of practice and know-how how to use, but he is a very capable champion. And I kind of feel like he's one of those champions that's not a gate-kept secret, but he's again one of those champions where you need to kind of commit fully and then invest and believe in him, and only generally like more experienced or more whaley players have the privilege of affording to do so, but the results are effective for sure. Moving on, Enchantress. Enchantress has lost a lot of her defensive value. There's no way around it. She's no longer the menace that hunts your nightmare. She's no longer the reason why you want to toss your phone against the wall. And she still can be, and that's like the one thing that kind of like still gives her value, is because even if you use a great counter against Enchantress, that fight can go tits up so easily. But that happens less often because number one, we're better at fighting her. Two, we have discovered plenty of ways how to nuke her. And number three, there are just like more reliable and efficient options available, I suppose. And yeah, number four is that there's just a wide list of champions that actually can attempt and do that fight, and that these days is apparently not good enough anymore. But the things that give her the most value are, number one, she is insane defender under specific. Like if you give her any meaningful amount of combat power rate or power gain, or some sort of ability to activate more special attacks in general, she's borderline unkillable. She just is. Like if she gains more power than she's originally intended to, it becomes a nightmare. Absolutely. And there are other nodes that can increase the level of difficulty in that fight quite drastically. So she's the type of champion that, again, I personally don't necessarily place in the Battlegrounds deck anymore in a generic meta, but then there's going to be supercharged version of her, and she's going to be absolutely terrorizing everybody again. The thing why I think she is more valuable than most meta merchant defenders in the game is that even in generic meta, she always has a chance to fail that fight because of her AI, because of the way she throws special attacks, because of that miss RNG that can catch you, because of her, again, in refusing to throw a heavy attack or refusing to go for an intercept. A lot of things can go wrong in a fight when fighting Enchantress. And that's why she's here. She's definitely kind of like that one boss that used to be extremely difficult and gave you nightmares, but then you learned the tricks and then you kind of go and farm that boss. That's the way I kind of see it. She's nowhere near as scary as she used to be. She can still kick your ass sometimes though. Moving on, I'm giving it to Kindred. Honestly, Kindred is the second best Mystic defensive champion right now. Offensively, obviously, he's not gonna be great. As in, like, he actually can do good stuff. He's just kind of slow. But besides that, him being a good defender right now is down to two things, and very simple two things. Number one, Kabam loves messing with root mechanics, or your ability to punish special attacks. Basically, that heavily impairs him. So there's quite frequently an instance where the fight against Kindred is more dangerous than it should be. Like even in the current meta, you have to punish his special attacks, otherwise you're going to start taking damage. But if you get rooted at the wrong time, you just can't do it, and the fight immediately explodes in the difficulty. It's still doable, but it's going to be much slower and harder. So there's a lot of things and a lot of interactions that make him a harder defender. That's one. But two, John's AI and reaction times are on crack, man. There's just no other way to put it. There have been so many times when he he activates his level 1, and I'm set up to punish it perfectly, and I still get parried. And then you get wrecked. Or if I don't get parried, he just dexes out of it somehow. He recovers and dexes out of it. Like, this is like exactly like an artificially managed kind of like glow up of a defender. Like, you cut that reaction time, and that is the only reason he's dangerous. Like, if we could punish him as safely as we could a year and a half ago, I wouldn't put him in top 10. Maybe bottom of top 15. It's quite literally just the recovery times. That's all there is to it. You could punish him as you were originally intended to. And if Kabam hadn't their heads up their asses when, you know, coding and meddling with all those things, he would be significantly less dangerous. The way he is right now, he's a very dangerous defender. Very, very dangerous defender. So keep that in mind. It's scary. It's one of my personal menaces in game, period, as well, by the way. Just because, like, the fight can go sideways so quickly. Anyways, moving on, Juggernaut. Juggernaut's also losing a lot of his ground. I genuinely consider putting Kindred above Juggernaut, which kind of blew my mind. For now, I love Juggernaut higher, but I don't know if I'll do it for long. And Juggernaut is kind of like the opposite of Kindred. Juggernaut is a champion that's getting screwed over heavily right now because of Kabam's decisions. And what I'm about to tell you is factual, and it's not a fabrication. The guy who designs metas for Battlegrounds and is responsible for some other, you know, content design, hates Juggernaut. So he's gonna often put in things that will stop him on purpose. That is, you know, admittedly true information. The fact that the guy who makes the Battlegrounds metas really dislikes Juggernaut. You know that for a fact. All that said, obviously, Juggernaut's type champion. When he works, he's just about the best nuke in the game. When he doesn't, he's garbage. Problem with Juggy, though, as with many other champions that are kind of like receding in the popularity, is that Kabam's creating more and more champions that you can't do well with brute damage. There's like more and more of these like safeguard champions like Captain Britain and Dark Phoenix, where like your damage is heavily capped. There's more champions like Yelena that, again, caps your attack rating or locks it in a place. And then combine that with the defenders that plays debuffs on you regardless of what you do and whether you get hit or not. All of those are instant kind of like no-goes for Juggernaut. So when Juggernaut works for the matchups that he works, he's going to be one of the best options just about always. Problem is, it's quite easy to switch him up, and Kabam's using it more and more often. So yeah, he's sliding down. You know what? You know, I'll change it. I think Kindred has more value right now than Juggernaut. I really do. It pains me. Juggy was my favorite champion for such a long time. But no, I think Kindred is higher. I think Kindred is number 6 and Juggernaut's number 7. I'll be honest. That was me being biased. That was me holding on to my poor boy. They're doing him dirty. They're absolutely doing him dirty. But here we are. Still one of my favorite champions to just casually quest with and smash opponents in the face. Alright, let's move on. Spot number 5, I'm giving to Pavitr. And here, I realistically think he can take a higher place. I generally do. I could almost kind of expect him to. The one reason why I'm not placing him higher than spot number 5 right now is, well, quite frankly, because I do not know the full limits of the champion yet myself. I don't think what anybody really does. And we need a bit more time to see how well he works in how many metas, how reliable he is. But I love what I see so far. He's a very, very good champion. He does have a particular playstyle, which I initially thought I might dislike more than I did. But I actually don't mind using him, like from the gameplay perspective. So that was a huge win. And other than that, I really, really like using him. I love the fact that he turns out to be quite good against Onslaught. He turns out to be quite good against Bullseye and Nico, and he has quite a wide variety of matchups. And obviously, his power level will depend on how used you are and exactly like how well you know his rotations and are able to execute them. Whether you know exactly how much damage you're gonna need for that big level 2 cash out, for instance. But in general, I have been using him more and more, and I can absolutely see him as like one of the best mystics in the game, which is why he's rank 4 for me as well. And I do think with a bit more time, I would place him even higher potentially, because I do think he has the potential to kind of like beat some of the champions that are ahead of him. Overall, I think he's a solid, good addition to the game, a good addition to the Mystic class. The one thing you'd kind of wish him, defensive utility. He's an okay defender, to be honest. He's not like the best, but he can do some things on defense. He can stall a bit, and he can be kind of annoying. But yeah, obviously he's like offensively centered champion. That answers the current problems. There's not that much more I want to say about him, but so far from what I have seen, I do like him. I recommend him, and I do think he has potential to climb higher here. Then Shatra. And Shatra, I never expected to like Shatra as much as I did, but I do. And the thing with Shatra is she is one of the most versatile champions in the game. We actually did that in the matchup spreadsheet list. I believe this is the one. And so far, of all the champions that we did enter throughout the streams and stuff, she had actually the highest amount of relevant defenders that she can take. Out of all of the significant defenders in the game, sorry, that's Berg too, where's Shatra? Out of all the significant defenders in the game, she either takes well or half decently almost all of them. There's like 4 champions that she's a definite no against. And that is as versatile as you can make champion. It comes down obviously to quite a few things. She delivers damage with her wasps and nobody being particularly immune to it. It would be even better if that was direct damage, not energy damage, but fine. That's where her like biggest weakness comes from. So basically she has a unique dot that just about nobody in the game is fully immune to. And obviously her ability to kind of like spam your specials and access more damage that way. And again, she's not going to be the fastest, kind of similar to Werewolf, but she's objectively a little bit faster than Werewolf is, with even wider array of matchups. Again, more and more champions come out, and it's like, guess what? It turns out that she's half decent Captain Britain counter. It turns out that she can do Yelena. It turns out that, everything in the Cosmic class, either she does very well or, does quite well. And she just goes from class to class and kind of like kicks their teeth in. There are obviously limitations to using her. Currently, we're experiencing one where it's like extremely difficult to use her, and I do think she has taken a bit of a step back. There is a chance that champions like Nico and new Mystic Spidey and potentially some new ones kind of like will retake their place if they end up being like either easier to use or slightly faster. But as things stand now, she is one of the best Mystic offensive champions in the game, and has a very wide variety of matchups. And I changed my mind again. I'm going to put her in spot number 3. As I am describing the champions, I realize that I did, in this case, hold on a bit too much to my biases. But yeah, I'm going to put her in 3rd spot. She's going to be number 3. And I just demoted Tiger. Because Tiger definitely has lost a bit of step. Part of it is AI. Part of it is unreal recovery times. And other than that, it's the block damage. Still, nonetheless, with the StatCast relics, increasing her tankiness, I do think she's still absolutely one of the most impactful Mystic champions in the game. I do think when she works, she can do an incredible amount of fights and damage as well. And many of you guys know how scary it is when an opponent does have rank 4 Tiger. Obviously, as the game moves on, I do think that kind of like the overall power levels equaling out and spreading out, which is why I think Tiger is taking a bit of a step back, because there are like newer, kind of like more suited champions available for some specific things, and Tiger does have very high skill ceiling as well. But I do think she's absolutely still a top 5 Mystic champion. I do think I slightly would give Shatra the nod because of her ultimate versatility. Because Tiger can do much of what Shatra does, and Tiger will be faster at doing it often enough. Although, often by sacrificing a bit of her health. But Shatra just does way more in the game, and is still respectably fast. So yeah, I think I'm gonna put Tiger in number 4, Shatra in number 3. For number 2, I'm gonna give it to Kushala. Kushala, I think, has just kept chugging along. I think she got quite popular when she got released, and then, after half a year later, we were considering her one of the top mystics. And I think as things kind of like carry on, Kushala is just kind of going from strength to strength to strength in terms of matchups. Obviously, like, the one thing she can't do is like the Dark Phoenix, but besides that, she fights extremely well outside of the class field. Besides that, she also interacts tremendously well with a ton of different nodes that we are experiencing in real time right now. For instance, we just had the prowess meta where opponents gain prowess, that supercharged Kushala. Then we're about to have that meta that gives Fury, and Shatra interacts insanely well with any additional damage modifiers. And then it's also, she's quite like reliable in the matchups that she does, and she can do them consistently. Some of the newer mutant threats she does, very well, like Jean Grey as well, for example. She can be good against Gentle, and she destroys Dust, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I do think overall Kushala is the second best Mystic champion. I think offensively, you could say that Kushala is the best Mystic, but all things combined, I think Kushala takes the second place, which I think is great, because she is absolutely worth it. I did want to note that one thing that gets underestimated is her Sig ability and importance in Sig levels, because when you do take her to the max Sig, your chances of applying the passive effects get significantly higher. And once you do that, once they have increased potency, and with the increased potency, you just kind of unlock a new version of her. First of all, there are often crucial instances in many of the metas that rely on things being passive instead of debuffs. In general, that just makes her all that much better. People do underestimate people underestimate what difference of a Sig 20 to Sig 200 Chatra is, for sure. But there you go. I think she's the second best Mystic champion in the game. Offensively, probably the most capable. And the best one, there's just like no surprise here. It's Neeko. It almost feels like she was designed to destroy everything that Cosmic Class has. Like, the existence of Neeko has damaged the stock of Dark Phoenix, Thanos, Serpent, plus a whole bunch of champions so much. It really, really has. Because previously, and you can see, like, and Pavitra is obviously going to be workable in that as well in the conversation. But previously, specifically in Valorant situations, Serpent, for instance, was always a relatively safe draft. Because, even if opponent's going to get that Kushala and whatever else not, number one, when you were drafting these Cosmics, opponent kind of had to mix and match. Because there were these champions that do, like Hood, for instance, that do Dark Phoenix extremely well, but they don't do Serpent as well. Like Shatra and whatever, Tiger. But now, the fact that she just shuts down all of that. She just shuts down all of it completely. Is a massive damage there. Like, she just annihilates the class. She really does. And that's significant. And on top of it all, Neeko is almost always a safe bet as well, because she does have like very big defensive capabilities. The fact that she escaped the rebalancing program is kind of nuts, because she is like one of the best 2 Mystic defenders in the game right now, for sure. And obviously she does have counters, but number one, those fights can still go haywire. Number two, even with some of the counters, it takes quite a while because of how many specials she can spam, and the fact that you have to deal with that invisibility, and the fact that, there's that buff immunity, so even some of the champions that would counter her still get slowed down quite significantly, like Spider-Woman. And she's kind of a menace in the game right now. She's one of the top 5 champions in the game for sure right now. And yeah, she's kind of busted. And the funny thing is that really made sure that she destroys all of the Cosmic class, because They even gave her ability to deal with Unstoppable, with Halt. That seems like such a random thing when you already completely have, the buff immunity, which is by far and away the strongest buff control that we have in the game. They just felt like kind of like double down, just like this Halt. You and I, we all know that it is a big middle finger to Deathless Thanos. That's facts. They literally did this so she can be as aggressive as possible against Deathless Thanos. That's it. But they still did it, right? And yeah, she's kind of crazy. It is. Obviously, the pre-fights and the fact that you can activate all of them, so you can start the fight with buff immunity. That's crazy. Immunity to poison and rapture on demand. Yes, please, right? And then obviously they did the whole if opponent's immune to poison, you can still use Nico type thing, which is obviously masterpiece for utility too. And which enables her to completely nuke like a random weird vision, which I love, by the way. She's just stupidly crazy. She is currently the strongest Mystic champion. And again, important note here, because I have heard some complaints that Nico is, slow. First of all, she's not the fastest champion in the game outside of buff-heavy matchups, for sure. Second of all, if you do want to make her faster, you absolutely want to have her at max sig. This actually adds up to be a fairly significant difference in her damage output. As we can see here, that poison deals 1500 damage at sig 40. Will end up dealing 2800 damage, and you can get up to like 20 of these, and that is a massive amount of difference in damage and her defensive value too. So there you go. So I think that's the way I see the Mystic Glass right now. I do have a couple of changes to make. There's the old list. Let's update the new one. Let's make these changes together. I think Shatra is still third. I think Tiger is fourth. Kind of pains me that. And this pains me even more. This pains me the most. This. The fact that Juggernaut is below Kindred. But it had to be done. Kabam made it so. Right, that's it for now. I really need to go. Sorry, I get to bed. I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the